And so, I got into the whole health program through that. I had no health background, no health experience at all. And got through it through that. And then a couple of years later, I'm doing this, and I'm, personal ministries. I started doing personal ministries for our church, which is a whole nother story, which, because everything happened so fast once I came back. And then I went to India with friends of mine. And they're friends of mine that had built 73 churches in India using their own money. And so we went and toured these churches. And I started wondering, what can I do? What can I do? Because I saw that there was huge potential. And the potential I saw was, for instance, we'd go out to eat and there'd be 5-10 people, at a nice restaurant. We'd eat whatever we want, bring on desserts and drinks and whatever. And it cost $10. And we'd give these widows $5 worth of rupees, and they could last for a month. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, there's a lot that we could do here, and there's so much need, and our money goes so far. What can I do? And I went back. The second time I went back, we went back. Well, I was going to
back to India.
Back to India. We were going to do an evangelism series. So the Asian Aid, it's now Child Impact, but was Asian Aid. They were going to sponsor me to do an evangelism. At that point, I'd done a couple of evangelism series in the U.S. They were going to sponsor me to do an evangelism series in India. And
So you're an evangelist now.
At this point, yes, I'm doing evangelism series. So, yeah. It's God just keeps laying these opportunities in front of me and giving me, I guess, the ability to do some of it. So yeah, and as you say, I have no real formal training in any of this, but God lays out the training in front of me, and just gives me the right people to show me what to do and how to do it. And I the first couple of series I did were Share Him. Have you heard of Share Him?
Mm-hmm.
So they're basically, the evangelism series are put together, and you read them and you flip through the slides and you do the evangelism series. So those are the first couple I did, but by doing those first couple Share Him, I learned how to write my own sermons and write my own evangelism series. But I learned that, and they had all the best evangelists come together to write the Share Him series. So that was my training, is jumping in and doing it. But I was supposed to do an evangelism series in India, but the government was getting tighter and tighter. And so they said, yeah, we're not going to be able to sponsor you for that. And I said, well, will they do a health program? And he said, well, I think they will. So we did a health program in India. We took a nurse and a doctor of public health and a CNA over, and we did a medical program. And while I was over there, we had crowds of people that would come around us. There was so much desperate need. And I had these 2 9-year-old boys that came to me, and they were helping me move things around and do this and do that. Because of course I don't have any medical experience. So I'm just doing the organizing and everything else. And then I do a little health speech at the end of our little health camps that we did. And these 2 boys, and they came up to me after we were done, and they said, so we're hungry. I was like, you're hungry? I didn't have any food with me, right? I had pocketfuls of rupees, but I had hundreds of people around me. And they said, sir, we're hungry. And looking back on that, man, I wish I'd have slipped them some rupees. But at the time, I didn't know what to do, because if I pull out rupees and start giving it to people, what's going to happen? I mean, is everybody going to want rupees? And I felt so incredibly helpless. These 2 little 9-year-old boys were hungry, asking me for food, and there was nothing I could do about it. And so I talked to our, public health doc and public health nurse afterwards, and I'm saying, what can we do about this? They said, well, the problem is we can't feed all the children in India, but the biggest problem is their environment, because any nutrition they get goes towards fighting off disease, and not much towards building healthy bones and bodies and all that kind of stuff. And I did some research after that, and I was reading some things where it said that if you could teach children to drink clean water and wash their hands, you could cut the child mortality rate in half. in half, just by teaching them to drink clean water and wash their hands. And so at that time we trained 30 Bible workers to do health work, and we given them a book called Where There Is No Doctor. Well, some of these guys took this book back home and used it and gave it to their wives. And their wives started doing the medical missionary work on their own, without any training, without any stipends. And so we heard these stories. And matter of fact, one of the really neat stories is that the guy went home, he taught his wife went through the whole book and started doing medical work in the village all on her own. They were on a motorcycle ride one day, and they were coming back in the dark, and it was raining and it was getting dark, but they saw this group at the side of the road. And so they pulled over to see what was going on. Well, this woman was in labor, but they didn't have a way to get her to the hospital. And so the woman took her and surrounded her with women and delivered that baby right there on the side of the road. From what she'd read in Where There Is No Doctor, right, in the book. Delivered the baby right there. So 2 weeks later, the Bible worker and his wife come back to check on the family and start doing Bible studies with them and started a church there. So now there's a church in that area because of that. And when we heard this story, we're like, okay, we trained the wrong people. We need to be training the women. And so that's basically how it started. The next year, we went back and trained 20 women and came back. We didn't have anybody to give us.
Is this Ultimate Mission now?
This is Ultimate Mission now, yeah. So we didn't have any stipends for them or anything, but we told them we'd give them stipends. And so we trained them. And at the time, we trained them, and then we would go back and try to find people that would pay the stipends. And it was funny because we'd start paying the stipends. We'd say, okay, we got stipends for 3 of you. So we're going to pay 3 of you, and then we'll get stipends for the rest of you as soon as we can. Well, what we found out was the 3 was splitting the stipends up with all of them. And so
these were not large amounts of money.
These were not large amounts of money. And so we just decided, you know what? We're just gonna go ahead and pay it, and we're just gonna see what God does. And God brought in the funds. And I don't know how God does it. I can't even put my finger on where the funds come from sometimes. I mean, I can. I know where the funds come from. Of course, we keep records, but just looking back over the years, it just, when we needed the money, God put it in there.
So what do you pay these women?
So we start them out at 2,000 rupees a month, and then we move them up to 3,000 rupees a month. So
what is that?
Depending on the exchange rate. So when we first started doing it, the exchange rate was around 55 rupees to the dollar. And so at the time it was around $40. But then as the exchange rate has gone up, so now you're getting about, I don't know, $30 and $45 because we end up going to 3,000 rupees after they've been with us a year, after they've turned in their reports.
A month.
So a month, yeah. So it isn't much. It isn't much. We give them this. We give them medical equipment. We make sure that they have smartphones, and we pay their supervisors considerably more. We pay their supervisors around $200 a month, but the supervisors oversee everything, and the supervisors are normally always educated, so they can work in hospitals, they can work in other places. So we have to pay them more, but they oversee the program. But these women are I mean, they'll spend that money sending their kids through school, paying their rent. I mean, in India, $40 a month goes a long ways. And they're not working full time either. What we ask them to do is 6 visits a day. See 6 people every day. And with that, we get well over 100,000 health visits a year with the group that we have. So it's a pretty amazing impact. We've watched churches grow. We've been told that villages are getting healthier. Dysentery is being reduced, and all kinds of different things, good things. I mean, I get stories all the time of different things these women are doing. And the other day we got a story of a woman that had to deliver a baby in a lady's house because the ambulance just didn't get there in time. She went over to, and the lady was having stomach pains. She went over, realized the lady was in labor, and called the ambulance, but the ambulance took 15, 20 minutes to get there. And in that 15, 20 minutes, the baby came. And she delivered the baby.
And who are these women?
So these women are the wives of Bible workers and pastors. So so a lot of times they're helping their husbands anyway. But what we've done is we've given them a skill, and we've given them a little bit of money to help them as they're helping the pastors. And that is another thing that we wanted to do, because the pastors were having a hard time because it doesn't pay much being a pastor or being a Bible worker. And so some of them were leaving their jobs to go drive a car, drive a taxi, or to work in the fields. And a lot of the churches were being shut down because there wasn't enough pastors. And so we wanted to figure out, how can we get this pastor's family enough money? The money seemed to be enough at the time. I mean, organizations like Gospel Outreach and Global Mission Pioneers are have increased their wages. So these Bible workers are making a decent amount of money. But at the time when we first started, it was really tough to make a living. I mean, it's still not easy. I mean, anywhere in India, it's a tough life. There's just not a lot of money to be made. There's just not a lot of good jobs to be had. And same thing in Ethiopia, where we're at right now, and the Philippines and Nepal.
You're in all these countries?
Yes, yeah. So Southern Sudan, we've got women in there as well. So yeah, we're in 5 countries now, and we've got around 229, I think, 230 women working within these 5 countries. And they're doing amazing work. We get these stories all the time. One story that I was really proud of, we started a thing in Ethiopia where when Dr. Anderson and I were over there, your son and I were over there, we were taking these patients that we would see, and we'd take critical care patients and we'd send them to the hospital. We had 6 critical care patients that we sent to the hospital, and they got the medicine they need. Some of them had to stay overnight. Some of them had, super high blood sugars, super high blood pressures, and all 6 of these people got treated, got the medication they needed, saved their life. Cost us less than $150.
For all of them?
For all of them. So we started a pilot project in Ethiopia where we are sending people for critical care. And one young girl had an infection in her leg. And they said that she needed to go into the hospital, but her mother didn't have the money or to take her all the way into the hospital, which was a long journey that had to be paid for. And then the doctor's treatments that had to be paid for. Well, as our supervisor looked at it over there, the problem was that she was going to lose her leg. This infection was getting worse and worse. So we were able to send her to the hospital, get the infection treated, and keep her from losing her leg. And as somebody that has lost my leg, I appreciate that very much. So there's a lot of different good things that are going on with this program. What we never realized when we first started training women is the impact it would have on the women. So we knew what we first wanted to do is have the impact on the children, because who best to train children to wash their hands and drink clean water except mom? I mean, the women carry the water, the women make the food, the women take care of the babies. And, every study you look at, if you can educate women, the health of the whole village raises. Who better to train than the mothers? But what we didn't realize is the effect that it would have on the women, on their, how they felt about themselves, how they, presented themselves to the village, how other people felt about them. Because, in some of these countries...
So this is positive.
This is a huge positive effect just for the women. I talk to the ladies. I say, what is it like now that you're a health worker? How are you being treated? And their faces light up because they're being treated with respect. They're being treated with dignity. And they're giving hope to all the other women in the village. In places where women have a huge, very high suicide rates. In India, 38% of all the women in the world between ages of 15 and 39, 38% of all the women in the world that will take their life today will be in India, that one country. There's something wrong.
And why?
Well, the women are treated like property. They don't have the respect. They have, there's a lot of alcoholism. There's a lot of poverty, and when you have alcoholism and poverty, women aren't treated. But there's child marriages. I mean, there's women that a girl. Maybe her parents tell her that we're gonna have a party tonight. So dress up for the party and help serve. And so, 12, 14-year-old girl, she's helping serve at this party. In the middle of the party, she finds out that she's the one that it's her wedding night.
Mm.
And so, and a man she's never met will be marrying her that night. And when she gets married, she now goes to live with his parents, right? And he could be 30 years old, marrying a 14-year-old girl or even older. And you just imagine the wedding night how horrifying that would be.